The Cleveland Cavaliers are undefeated on the NBA season, along with the Los Angeles Dodgers clinching a World Series title. This time, no need for an asterisk. Freddie Freeman was the MVP, and a great story for him. I'll react to my thoughts on the World Series and watching those Yankees lose. Plus, Anthony Richardson, why he stepped out of that game against the Houston Texans for Indianapolis, and my thoughts on what should happen with that situation next. Plus, more thoughts on the NFL. It's Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty, and yes, for Halloween, I am dressed like Glenn Quagmire from Family Guy. Giggity, 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 goo! Let's get to the news. Happy Halloween, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. If you like the show, as always, you gotta like and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out the show on social media. Hoty Raw Takes on Instagram. Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty on Facebook, and on Twitter/X, Hoty Andrew. Hope everyone had a fantastic night yesterday watching some sports. I know there's some more sporting events on this Halloween, so make sure to enjoy those. And happy Halloween to everybody. If you're out trick-or-treating today with your kids, or you're out going to a costume party, make sure to make the best of Halloween this year, like every year. So, hope everyone had a great night last night, and hope everyone has a great Halloween today. Let's get right to some sports now. The Cleveland Cavaliers currently holding the NBA's best record. They're 5-0, and now they have some good quality wins over the New York Knicks and the Los Angeles Lakers. Thanks to the Celtics losing to Indiana last night, they also have the number one seed in the Eastern Conference if the season was to end today. Obviously, it's an 82-game season, so there is 77 games left to go for the Cleveland Cavaliers, but what a start for them. I believe it's just them in Oklahoma City right now that have the undefeated records, because the Lakers did, of course, lose to us, along with the Lakers losing to the Suns the other day, and, of course, Boston losing to Indiana. That gives the Cavs an undefeated record right now, and they're just on fire offensively. They're great. Think about the times they've already scored 130 points within the first 5 games of the season. They only did that a couple times under J.B. Bickerstaff, who's now the Detroit Pistons head coach. Kenny Atkinson has definitely been an X factor to the Cavs' hot start, putting emphasis on offense and continuing those defensive principles so far seems to be working for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, of course, I cannot just forget about the fact that Bronny James Jr. did have his first 2 points of his NBA career in that game yesterday, but I want to put that to the aside for later on in the show, because I do have some deeper thoughts on the whole Bronny James saga with the Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James. For as great as LeBron James and Bronny James are, and of course LeBron James, the legacy he has with the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is Donovan Mitchell's team now. This is Evan Mobley's team now. Jared Allen, Darius Garland, the core four for the land, as we're saying here in Cleveland. An unbelievable way to start the year. It's the first 5-0 start for the Cavs since the 2016-17 season. They would go on to lose in the finals to the Golden State Warriors that year. But hey, the Cavs were coming off a fresh championship appearance that year before in 2015-16. And that was, of course, the LeBron James team. So this is a great start for the Cavs. The Donovan Mitchell era is underway, and it is special. It really, really is. Now, with having said that, I did say on the last edition of Raw Takes, I don't see the Cavs getting out of the second round of the playoffs just because of how competitive the NBA is right now. But these hot starts mean something down the line. Now, the Cavs getting off to that possible number one seed, and if they're able to just keep things afloat and hold on to it the rest of the season, already with 77 games to go, if you could just hold on to that number one spot, you have home court advantage throughout the playoffs. And it's a tough place to play in Cleveland. It's not going to be easy for teams to just come to Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse and win ball games. We've seen that historically with the Cleveland Cavaliers, even through the LeBron James era. Obviously, through the dark ages, it wasn't much as so because the Cavs were so awful. But outside of the dark ages, the Cavaliers have really been a great home arena. And I think the fans there get loud. You have Loudville, obviously. It's a tough place to play. And I think the Lakers experienced that yesterday. And the Lakers have some good players. Listen, I don't think the Los Angeles Lakers are any kind of title threat. But Anthony Davis still is a all-time great player right now. LeBron James, of course, but, you know, he's still much older LeBron James. To me, the Los Angeles Lakers right now are just LeBron gets whatever he wants kind of franchise. And as I said, I'll explain that later in the show. But the Lakers, to me, are just kind of the glamour, the Los Angeles. It's not like the same staple of title domination we've seen from the LA Lakers. This is much more of a LeBron show right now, with J.J. Redick, his guy, being the new head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. And I agree with a lot of the pundits out there that are saying J.J. Redick could actually be a great basketball coach. He could be. I'm just not so sure he was ready for the big moment because LeBron James essentially elevated him to that position, in my view. But having said that, the Lakers, it's a quality win for the Cavs because they did have a great start to the year. And obviously, your former superstar, LeBron James, playing on the other team. I still think as a Cavs fan, it's great to get wins over him. But the story here, even though Bronny James got his first 2 points, and that is great, is the fact that this core four is working so far. And this is, the baby of Kobe Altman, I like to say, because Kobe Altman put this core four together to work really, really well. And a lot of people last year were saying Darius Garland's got to go. A lot of people last year were saying Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, they can't really piece each other together. It's a weird combination. And even though I think a lot of those thoughts are valid, they said, let's go get an offensive-minded head coach and let's see what the core four does with that. Because we know they can play good defense. They showed it in the Orlando series last year. But can this team explode offensively? And so far, I think they're on pace to do that. And the Orlando Magic are going to be a lot better this year. We've seen Paolo Banchero already go off in a few games with the Magic to start the season. So there is a lot of basketball to be played. But the Cavaliers are off to a phenomenal start. And I'm looking at the Eastern Conference right now. I'll say outside of Boston, I'm not confident in anybody. I'm not confident in the Milwaukee Bucks until they fire Doc Rivers, who, as I said before, is one of the worst hires I've ever seen a team do, and that's actually terrible for Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard. And a lot of people are saying that chemistry is not going to work. I think it could work a lot better than people think. It's just Doc Rivers is their head coach, and if Chris Middleton comes back, that could be a good situation in Milwaukee. But you also look at Orlando. As I said, I think they're going to be a lot better, but I'm not ready to say the Magic are on the Cavs standard. The Cavs already beat them in a playoff series. Indiana had a nice run last year. They have great offensive talent, but that's not really a defensive team. They could drop 140 on you, but they might lose 141 to 140. I'm still not sold Indiana is ready for that big moment. The New York Knicks are physical. They can come get you, but the thing with the New York Knicks, though, is they're still missing something. And the Cavs already beat them once in the regular season. So is it possible that the Knicks could become that threat later on in the year? I think it's possible. But, Karl Anthony Towns is not the same style of player that they used to have with New York when they had that Cavs series. But Jalen Brunson is still, I think, a superstar in the NBA already. And the New York Knicks are obviously a force to be reckoned with. And the Philadelphia 76ers just haven't taken off yet, but they're still a team in the Eastern Conference that people should be keeping an eye on for down the line with Joel Embiid and, of course, the great Paul George. So, if I am the Cleveland Cavaliers right now, I'm in prime position. You just got to keep this thing going. And you do play the Celtics, I believe, 2 times. I think it's 2 times. I have to check the schedule before the calendar year ends and you go on to 2025. So that's going to be 2 tough games right there where the Cavs are going to need to step up and prove themselves. But hey, listen, if you're the Cavs right now, you're 5-0, you're smooth sailing, and you look at the rest of the NBA right now, especially in the Eastern Conference where you play, this is manageable for you to at least get the number 1 seed. Why I'm hesitant about them saying they can't get out of the second round yet, obviously more of my thoughts on that when playoff time arrives this spring, but I'm just hesitant to say the core four is really going to be a splashing success. I think offensively we're going to start to see all 4 of these guys explode a little bit with Kenny Atkinson, because as I said with that mentality of Kobe Altman, this was his core, this was his design team, and he wants to see it break through and work. I am all for that. And we just got to see if the offense explodes into the way it does. But you got to keep those same defensive principles, too. And J.B. Bickerstaff, the guy who put emphasis on defense, is now the Detroit Pistons head coach. So will that same defensive principle last throughout the year? We'll have to see. But right now, the Cavs are on fire, and it's a great way to start the year. Looking at the rest of the NBA right now, Oklahoma City, I think, is a team to be reckoned with in the Western Conference. And I was just talking with a buddy of mine the other day about the Los Angeles Clippers and possibly the punishment they've taken for trading Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to Oklahoma City. And then you look at the Chet Holmgren who they drafted, who's possibly going to be just as much of a superstar with him. The Oklahoma City Thunder, it's like the Minnesota Vikings of the NBA to me, because they always get all these great players, but they never win championships. So will the Oklahoma City Thunder finally break through? We'll have to see. The Denver Nuggets are kind of off to a slow start, but I think the Denver Nuggets will be just fine. The Dallas Mavericks, kind of the same thing right now. I'm not as high on the Spurs as a lot of people are, because I know they did get Chris Paul. But Chris Paul is a lot older now, and he's not the same kind of Chris Paul we've seen in the past. I still think it'll be great for Victor Wembanyama to continue to learn. I also think Victor Wembanyama is a great player and is going to have a bright future, but the San Antonio Spurs are still a few years away, so I'm not so worried about them in the Western Conference. If I were to stack both the Eastern Conference teams and the Western Conference teams back-to-back, I would say the Eastern Conference teams are a lot better than the Western Conference teams right now, just based on when you look at the lineups and you look at the schedules and you look at the teams they're playing. They all have to play each other. Indiana's never a tough out, as I mentioned. You look at the Philadelphia 76ers, who are figuring things out right now, but should be fine down the line. You look at the New York Knicks, you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers, you look at the Milwaukee Bucks, even though they're off to a bad start, as I said. Once they fire Doc Rivers, which I believe they will do midway through this season, that team might start to take off a little bit more, as they should, because they still have two superstar players. And I didn't even throw the Miami Heat in there. The Miami Heat, they don't really take the regular season super duper seriously in recent years, but they still have Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. Eric Spoelstra is their head coach. As I said before, the Pittsburgh Steelers mantra of the culture in the NBA, that's what you have with the Miami Heat. So the NBA is definitely much more competitive in the Eastern Conference than the Western Conference, but the West has some really good teams. And I didn't even mention the Clippers, but the Clippers still are kind of a shell of themselves. James Harden a lot older than he used to be. It's kind of just a retirement home of the NBA. So many old superstars, and I don't think old superstars are going to get you championships. Oklahoma City's already kind of trying to do that with the young stars they have. You look at the Denver Nuggets, experienced, already won a title, great head coach in Michael Malone. They're in good shape with Jokic and Jamal Murray. You also look at Dallas, as I mentioned before. Now they add Klay Thompson to the mix. I'm not so sure that's going to necessarily elevate Dallas to a championship, but that's going to make the Mavericks a very competitive regular season team. A lot of great basketball teams out there right now, and the Cleveland Cavaliers happen to be one of them, and here in Cleveland I think we're ecstatic for that, especially watching the season the Guardians had, and of course Jameis Winston kind of lighting a spark in the Browns. Hopefully that's able to continue going into their Chargers game this weekend. So, Cleveland Cavaliers undefeated, the rest of the NBA, a lot of great teams out there. It's very competitive, and I'm excited to see how the Cavaliers keep their momentum. But one more thing before we move on from basketball I want to mention. Evan Mobley has already exploded in 225-point games already. This guy could possibly be a future superstar. I don't think J.B. Bickerstaff was able to tap into that offensive potential like Kenny Atkinson can. But I think Evan Mobley could eventually become the force of this team, and he and Donovan Mitchell could take the Cleveland Cavaliers wherever they want to go. I'm not so sure I'm ready to say Donovan Mitchell is the absolute number one on a team. I think if you could make Evan Mobley the number one and complement him with a Donovan Mitchell, then that team is absolutely on fire, and complementary pieces like Jared Allen and Darius Garland could make the Cavs an absolute finals contender. Maybe not this year, but down the line. The future is bright, and the basketball season is just getting started. All right, let's move on to the NFL. A little bit before we move on to the games ahead, I just want to talk a little bit about what happened this weekend with the Colts and Anthony Richardson, and them officially benching Anthony Richardson for Joe Flacco. Anthony Richardson claimed in his press conference that the reason he got pulled out of that third quarter play was because he was tired. He tapped out, he was done, he was tired. He couldn't finish the play. That is absolutely the lamest excuse for a pro athlete I've ever heard in my life. In any of the three sports. I can't play because I'm tired. Everybody on the Indianapolis Colts heard that. And I'm going to make a very, very, I don't want to say controversial, but a very blunt, raw take right here. If I'm the Indianapolis Colts, I am cutting Anthony Richardson today. Because that is the laziest thing I have ever heard a player say. I am making Joe Flacco the starter for the next 2 years because I know with Pittman on the roster and, of course, the great Jonathan Taylor on the roster, that the Colts could possibly make some sort of a run. Anthony Richardson betrayed his teammates by that comment. He threw them in the trash. A quarterback, especially, a pro athlete, to say, I got to get out of this play because I'm tired. When we have 2-minute drills in a league that could determine a football game. 2-minute drills that could determine a football game by a field goal or a touchdown. And in the third quarter, your quarterback says, I'm tired, I got to tap out. If I'm the Colts, I am cutting Anthony Richardson today. And maybe it's hard to take me seriously because I'm in a Glenn Quagmire t-shirt right now. Giggity, 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 goo. But Anthony Richardson, for what he said in that press conference, he deserved to be benched. Joe Flacco deserves to be the starter for the Indianapolis Colts, who has shown he can play very well. We saw it in Cleveland. And the Colts should just cut him now. He's got to go if he's going to have that kind of attitude playing football. That is absolutely the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard a pro athlete say. And I was high on Anthony Richardson in the draft. I thought he would be the second best quarterback in the draft to C.J. Stroud. I didn't think C.J. Stroud was going to take off the way he did, but he did nevertheless. And Anthony Richardson, I thought, had that kind of potential too, but I am officially sold out on him. He's sold out on his teammates. He's sold out on the Colts fan base. He's sold out on the city of Indianapolis just based on that one comment alone. Because of that, I would cut him today, and I would look at either bringing in a free agent quarterback or drafting another one down the line if I'm the Indianapolis Colts. And they made the absolute right decision to bench him. Maybe he's still a young player. Maybe we can give that excuse, but that's absolutely the laziest thing I ever heard from a pro athlete. Unbelievable. That's Jamarcus Russell kind of stuff. So hopefully the Indianapolis Colts can recover from it with Joe Flacco under center. Because I'm sure the Iron Man Joe Flacco isn't going to tap himself out and say, I'm tired. I'm sure Jonathan Taylor is going to run the football down every play for Indy. And I'm pretty sure that Pittman is going to be the same star wide receiver he's been for the Indianapolis Colts. That's just the most absurd thing I ever heard in my life. I got to tap out of this because I'm tired. That takes stock out of Anthony Richardson for me. And in a division where you already have to play C.J. Stroud twice a year, and the Jacksonville Jaguars are never a tough out for them either. Trevor Lawrence is still Trevor Lawrence in my view. That's going to be brutal for the Colts. But I still think they're very well coached with Shane Steichen, who turned the Colts around relatively quickly. I mean, that was a 4-11-1 team. Everyone thought they'd be the worst team in the NFL last year, and they went 9-8. That's pretty impressive, and the Colts do have a projected high good future ahead of them. But it may be with Joe Flacco the next 2 years. I would look at somebody else. Anthony Richardson, that comment alone just makes me believe he's not interested in football, because that was absurd. Let's go on to the upcoming games. We have one tonight on Halloween between the Texans and Jets, and I'm officially in the zone of I am sick of all these Jets primetime appearances, just like the Broncos a few years ago. The Jets are terrible. Aaron Rodgers is not the guy Aaron Rodgers used to be. I thought he could be, he's not. It's essentially the Green Bay Packers of 2018 and 2019 on the roster with Lazard, and now you have Devontae Adams, who lost to the Steelers back-to-back, once with the Raiders and then with the Jets. The Jets are awful. Everything about them's awful. And I think they're actually paying the price for firing Robert Saleh. Because Robert Saleh had that defensive edge that he brought to the defense. And in that Pittsburgh Steelers game, there was no defense. They lost 37-15. Obviously, it was a crunch time touchdown the last one, but they were losing 30-15 in that game to begin with. That defensive edge that the New York Jets had, and especially when you look at the talent on the defensive side of the ball, led by Sauce Gardner, you mean to tell me that the New York Jets just fell apart defensively like they did so far, and Robert Saleh being gone is part of the problem? This seems like an Aaron Rodgers playground to me. And playgrounds for football players never seem to work. And so, if I am the New York Jets, you just got to swallow the pill here. You have Aaron Rodgers this year. And you got to look at drafting a quarterback next year. I really think you have to. You're already on your way to a high draft position. So, just take the season for what it is and hope for the future again in typical New York Jets fashion. You just lost to the New England Patriots. And you already have the much better quarterback room. You annihilated that team earlier in the season. And I get it's any given Sunday, but you have no business losing to the Patriots. The Patriots. They're terrible. And you have all-time great players on the Jets right now. Aaron Rodgers is a future Hall of Famer. I get it, he's not the Aaron Rodgers of old. But Devontae Adams is still really good. Alan Lazard is pretty good offensively. Sauce Gardner leading the defensive charge. There's good players on the New York Jets. And you're 2-6. It's absurd. If Josh Allen was on the New York Jets right now, how good would that team be? I'd say a lot better. The New York Jets are a mess, and I think the only way out of it is to draft a quarterback next year and start a complete rebuild from scratch. I mean, well, maybe not necessarily a rebuild, but just get a quarterback in the building who can get the ball to Alan Lazard and Devontae Adams. Aaron Rodgers, might be time for him to retire, even though he's an all-time great, and I want to respect that aspect to Aaron Rodgers' career, but it's over. The Jets are done. It's a pathetic way to start the year. And the Buffalo Bills are already leading the charge there. Miami is not looking very good because of a lot of the injuries they've had. And you look at the New England Patriots, and they're also a mess. So the Jets got to figure something out if they're going to wrap up this season down. It's obviously a must-win for them. But the Houston Texans are coming, and they're a really good football team. And if I'm the Jets, I want nothing to do with C.J. Stroud right now. But if the defense is going to try to shut him down, and we'll see what takes place. But I would still say the Houston Texans absolutely should steamroll the New York Jets tonight. All right. Back to basketball for a second. I wanted to briefly touch on LeBron James and Bronny James and that Lakers glamour franchise I talked about. And yes, they are an all-time great NBA franchise. I'm not going to ridicule the Lakers as is because they are essentially the Yankees of basketball, as a lot of people refer to them as. You could also say that about the Celtics. But, I just wanted to touch on the whole Bronny James thing for a second because Bronny James did score his first 2 points in an NBA game, which is great. I'm happy for him. But the way he got to the Los Angeles Lakers, you can't tell me that it was set up for all this to be the situation. And I'm not saying like him getting his first 2 points in Cleveland, which I think is special, was a setup. But like LeBron James essentially got everything he wanted in the offseason and essentially has been running the Lakers in my eyes. And so far it's essentially become a LeBron James playground just as much as the Jets have become an Aaron Rodgers playground. LeBron James seems to be calling the shots. He got his head coach in J.J. Redick. He got his son on the team, which is special. But I still think it would have been better for LeBron James to let the draft process happen. And wherever Bronny James would have landed, and it seemed like it was all the way meant for him to land at 55 to go to the Los Angeles Lakers. But if it wasn't, and they didn't have to spend the draft pick, if he would have been undrafted by, let's say, the Charlotte Hornets, it would have been probably better for LeBron James to just go play a year there. I really think so. I just think it was all the way around LeBron James's calling of the shots that got him to play in Los Angeles in the first place. And I'm not trying to say it was fixed. I want to emphasize that. But it just feels like the Lakers right now are the LeBron James playground. And listen, he's an all-time great basketball player. I'm always going to be thankful for the 2016 championship. But this whole Lakers situation just doesn't seem right. It just doesn't seem right. And I think Bronny James could develop into something by going down to the G League, and he probably will. I'm sure the Lakers are going to send him to the G League, and that's where he's going to learn to develop his skill. I'm rooting for the guy. I really, really am. And I'm rooting for this situation to work out long term. And it's special for LeBron James and his son. It's special for the NBA, I get that. But you can't tell me that the Lakers aren't a LeBron James playground right now. If this team was serious about contending for a title, why aren't they getting the Klay Thompsons of the world? Why aren't they getting some of these younger draft picks to try to develop in some players to complement Anthony Davis and LeBron James, who are much older? I mean, the Lakers right now are just a LeBron James playground. It's tough for me to buy into that. And so I wanted to emphasize that with the Los Angeles Lakers because that's a fan base that's expecting a title every year. They've delivered one during the COVID season, but they haven't delivered anything else around that. LeBron James era, pre-LeBron James era, obviously, was kind of the dark ages for the Lakers and the franchise, but you know what? It is kind of pathetic. The Lakers are supposed to be the New York Yankees of basketball. They better present themselves to do it. And that's an expectant fan base in Los Angeles. And I think it's sad for the Los Angeles Lakers fans. And that's not to say LeBron James isn't an all-time great basketball player. That's not to say that Anthony Davis isn't good or Austin Reeves isn't good or that they don't have talent on the roster or that the organization is bad. Historically, they're a great organization. But this team is not competing the way they did in the Kobe Bryant years, in the Magic Johnson years, in the Shaq years. This is not the Los Angeles Lakers that were the Yankees of basketball. This is the LeBron James playground glamorous show. And as special as a lot of these moments are for LeBron James and the Lakers, in my view, it's not fair to the fan base. They should expect a title contender every year with LeBron James. Not we're going to be the 7th, 8th seed, and it's going to be a Hollywood show. And by Hollywood basketball, it should mean titles. It shouldn't mean let's let LeBron James run the roost. And that so far is what the Lakers feel like. It doesn't mean down the line they can't win titles after LeBron retires or even during LeBron's last stretch of years here in the NBA. But to me, it just feels like the LeBron James playground right now. It's hard for me to take the Los Angeles Lakers seriously as an NBA team. And I just wanted to point that out there before we move on to the World Series, where the Los Angeles Dodgers just had a stunning comeback after Giancarlo Stanton put the Yankees up 6-5. They came all the way back to win the World Series, and they got smoked by the Yankees in Game 4. absolutely smoked. I thought the series was going to go back to Los Angeles for a Game 6 where the Dodgers would clinch it. But Freddie Freeman being the MVP, absolutely well-deserved. His story is incredible when you hear about his son and you hear about his father's life and you hear about losing his mother at a young age. I'm really heartwarmed by the Freddie Freeman story. Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge weren't really big factors in this series, but granted, the Los Angeles Dodgers proved they were a better team outside of what the Yankees were able to do. And for the Yankees, I think they got to give Giancarlo Stanton a lot of credit. That was the Iron Man for them this postseason. It wasn't Aaron Judge or Juan Soto, the two-man lineup, as I referred to it all year long. But Giancarlo Stanton, for having average numbers in the regular season, he put them up in the postseason when it counted most, and I think the Yankees should give credit for that. With that being said, though, I do not like the New York Yankees. I despise them, and I'm glad they won the World Series, mainly because of their fans. Remember that incident in Game 4 where the fan ripped the ball out of Mookie Betts' hands? Uncalled for completely and absolutely ridiculous. The Dodgers were the better team, the best team in baseball all season long, and their future is only going to get brighter. I want to put everybody in Major League Baseball on notice. Shohei Ohtani isn't even pitching yet. And now a lot of people out there are saying, well, Shohei Ohtani, how long is he going to be pitching for? Because he could risk injury again. And I get that. But Shohei Ohtani is clearly an ace pitcher when he's pitching. And so when he gets to pitching on the mound, we are going to see the Los Angeles Dodgers take off even more. They could be a 110-win season next year for them with Shohei Ohtani pitching. With the rotation they already currently have. And the batter's already in the lineup. You have a Mookie Betts. You have a Freddie Freeman. You have a Teoscar Hernandez who puts up some good numbers when it counts most. I think the Los Angeles Dodgers have a bright dynasty future ahead of them, possibly. This could be a very special thing for them. And I also want to say this means a lot to a lot of the players on the Dodgers right now who don't necessarily get that asterisk with the COVID year next to them. Because even though in 2020 they won the World Series, it just doesn't feel right because it was the COVID season. This is absolutely special for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Well-deserved. Congratulations to the Dodgers, and they're a great organization. I'm just going to point it out. I know a lot of people talk about big market this, big market that. Major League Baseball, until they adjust the salary cap rules, which I think they desperately need to do because it's not fair to the smaller market teams, including even big market teams like the Chicago White Sox, who have years down the line in advance to work on. The Los Angeles Dodgers, as currently constructed right now, are set up to possibly win the World Series 3 of the next 4 years, possibly. I'm dead serious. They are on slate to be great, especially if Ohtani's pitching again. So if Rob Manfred's listening to this, consider a salary cap with the owners, please. Please consider a salary cap with the owners. But we can get into all the Major League Baseball rules and stuff. Next week, I'm going to be doing a Baseball in Review special segment of the show. Won't be too long, but we're going to review all the teams and possibly where they could be in the future on Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty, so stay tuned for that. But for me, the Dodgers, it was just a special run for them. And as I said, to everybody and the fans who said, well, big markets, the Los Angeles Dodgers are something to admire. The New York Yankees, it's more so I have hatred towards the fan base than the players. The Yankees had a good run, and they were the best team in the American League. There's no doubt about it. And if teams like the Guardians and the Astros and the Tigers and the Royals want to step it up, there's going to have to be some serious adjustments to the roster and serious spending. You're going to have to get another pitcher. You're going to have to add another batter to that lineup to compete with the Judge and the Soto. And as of right now, the Giancarlo Stantons of the world. Because that lineup is going to crush the American League for years to come, too. And the Yankees could easily go back to the World Series and win it all next year. They have major bullpen flaws that they have to fix. If they had a Guardians bullpen right now, then hands down the New York Yankees probably would have won that series within 6 or 7 games. But they don't. And because they don't have a New York Yankees, Cleveland Guardians-style bullpen, I should have said, Cleveland Guardians-style bullpen, the New York Yankees didn't win the World Series. Because I think that could have been the difference. The bullpen play was much better from the Dodgers. The Yankees had a great game in Game 4, but they were not the better team in this series. That was the Los Angeles Dodgers who put them on the brink of a 3-0 lead, and they won the World Series. And Freddie Freeman, as I said, special baseball player, and to hit a home run in every World Series game, that's tremendous. And he absolutely deserved the MVP for the World Series. Really special. All right, before we wrap things up here on Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty, just want to finish up on some college football. The Ohio State Buckeyes taking on Penn State this weekend. Penn State obviously in the top 4 right now. Ohio State struggled against Nebraska, which makes me hesitant going into this week's game to say that Ohio State will blow out Penn State, seeing how Indiana took care of business against Nebraska the way they did. It makes me nervous for the Buckeyes to compete with teams like Penn State and even Indiana, if that's the way they're going to play Nebraska. Now, with that being said, were the Buckeyes looking ahead to this game? Very much so. It's possible. And Penn State has been in a lot of close games this year. They were playing USC, and they only won that game 33-30. So Penn State is vulnerable. And they haven't been perfect all year in terms of their wins. They are undefeated on the season, but Penn State has had some ugly wins. So, and Ohio State obviously getting an ugly win over Nebraska, totally fine in that aspect as well, but it was still an ugly win, which makes me hesitant to believe they're just going to overtake Penn State in Penn State. I am very nervous about the Buckeyes going into this game, but if they do lose, the consideration to fire Ryan Day needs to be heightened for all Buckeye fans and all Buckeye Nation, because Ryan Day, his coaching style is clearly flawed. We see it every week, even in the games the Buckeyes win. They obviously lost the Oregon game because of coaching. Because I look at Trevion Henderson. I look at Quinshon Judkins. I look at Denzel Burke. I look at Will Howard. I look at players on the roster offensively and defensively. It's a much more talented roster than the Oregon Ducks. And it's absolutely a much more talented roster than the Penn State Nittany Lions. So if I am the Ohio State Buckeyes, this is on coaching. Coaching is going to cost them games if this continues. And it may continue this Saturday against Penn State. Hopefully it doesn't. I hope I'm wrong, but we'll have to see. But right now, if the Buckeyes end up losing to Penn State, then the Ryan Day hot seat alert needs to go up, and it needs to go up big. That's going to be it for this week's edition of Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. I'll have more on this week's slate of NFL games going into this weekend, including my Cleveland Browns taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. Give you a little bit of my thoughts on that on the last edition of Raw Takes, so if you want to check that out, check it out there. But I am not as high on the Browns as I was against them against the Ravens, so we'll see what takes place there. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, and check me out on social media. I'm Andrew Hoty. Those are my Raw Takes. I'm dressed like Glenn Quagmire from Family Guy. Giggity, 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 goo. All right. Have a wonderful Halloween, everybody, and I'll see you next time on Raw Takes this weekend.